Welcome to Frontier Behavioral Health's Real Recovery, Real Change. And now, here's your host, Ashley Carroll.
I'm Ashley Carroll. Welcome to Real Recovery, Real Change. Tonight you will meet Angela Rowe, whose story will take her to several states and changes that will bring on addiction. Then we'll talk to George Carter, a high school football player and your typical mountain boy. But life would take George down a road he swore he would never go. In the end, you'll be surprised where it leads Angela and George. Now let's meet Angela Rowe.
Well, I was born in Gastonia, North Carolina, but I was raised pretty much in Pikeville. My mother had 10 children, so I'm the baby of the 10. And so I had a lot of older brothers and sisters that did their own thing, and I followed in their footsteps a lot. So I was a big tomboy, climbing hills and doing things like that. My mom was like a gardener. She liked to garden, so I experienced a lot of that too, growing up, and just living like a farm girl. My stepfather was like a bee farmer, so he had a big bunch of bees and stuff like that, and he taught me how to smoke them and do all the things and get the honey. So I had just a life out in the hills, just doing stuff that you would do in the country. For a long time, I didn't know what my purpose was. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. At the age of 13, I kind of broke away from my family. The disease of addiction runs deep in my family, so there was a lot of chaos and a lot of things that went on, and I just basically drifted off into the, in the back while they lived their lives, and decided to go out on my own. I ended up in a relationship with a very toxic person, and had at least 3 years of toxicity in my life, a lot of abuse. I lived in fantasy world. I wanted to get married, have the White House and the picket fence and babies and all that stuff at an early age. After 3 years of a lot of abuse and stuff like that, I began to smoke marijuana. I guess the trauma that I experienced early on, because not only had we had to move to Kentucky because one sister was hit by a car and actually lived, but then I also had a sister that was hit by a car and killed. So I had a lot of depression and things like that. The world just seemed like a dark place, and that was fun to me, was to go out and use the drugs and hang out with the crowd and escape from the reality.
I'm a dad just like you, and I have a daughter that's fallen into the grip of opioids. Do I see my daughter as a bad person, a criminal, a drug addict? No, I still see her as my daughter, with a tough behavioral problem that can be treated. That's why I wanted you to know about Frontier Behavioral Health. They see your family the same way. They treat the behavior and send the person you always knew back to you. Call them at 606-297-1501. Real recovery, real change. Frontier Behavioral Health. Real Recovery, Real Change continues with Ashley Carroll.
At just 13, Angela is already in a bad relationship and experimenting. A move to Tennessee will only make things worse.
I started huffing paint and paint thinner and stuff like that, and just smoking, drinking, and stuff like that. I think it was 17 or 18 the first time I tried cocaine. So I was pretty much a poly user, and I would just go from one to the other, just whatever would make me escape the reality. I had convinced myself that I didn't have a problem. Where my brothers and sisters used and stuff, and I did that a lot too. I compared my use to theirs. I wasn't as bad as them, and I could actually function, whereas they didn't. And I didn't feel like I was stressing my mother out as much as they did, but I was. It had always caused me problems. Honestly, I would go until something would happen. Something would have to happen for me to stop. I was raped, put myself into a predicament where I was surrounded by a lot of men, knew better than to be there, using the drugs that I was using. Wasn't using marijuana, I was drinking. If I wasn't drinking. I was using cocaine. You know, as I just remember my whole entire teenage years, I was doing something. I ended up getting pregnant at the age of 17. And I was full-on addict at the time, and I went to juvenile, is where I found out that I was pregnant. So I had to stay clean because I was pregnant. I didn't want to hurt the baby. So that was probably the cleanest time that I'd had in between. And I did stop using. I saw a psychiatrist and, you know, spilled the beans on, you know, all of the drugs I used and all of the trauma and stuff that I experienced and all of that. And then when my son was born, I still did drugs, but not full on. My mother helped me with raising my child. My whole entire, you know, circle was users, so I just continued to use, and I thought it was normal. At the age of 22, I had went back to the boyfriend that I had had when I was 13. And more abuse, of course. I went right back to it, and then we started using pills. Like, that's when the pills really started coming out, the Oxycontin and things like that. And at first I felt like I was just using to be social, like, and just fit in with the crowd because, like I said, everybody, it was my normal. And then I got to a point to where I started to feel like I had to have it every single day. And then it just progressed from there. You know, I never could get enough. I just wanted more. Started using it IV, and it just went downhill from there, in and out of jails, in and out of prison. I married a Marine, and I moved to North Carolina, and I became a stripper, and my life just went completely crazy. The first time that I went to jail was for arson, for burning my house down. Whenever I got to jail, I had a lot of time to sit and think about all of my actions and everything that had led up into that point. And it was then that I realized that I was blaming all of my circumstances on the situations that was happening outside of me. And that's when I started to realize that my choices and my actions was what was landing me in those situations.
I'm a dad just like you, and I have a daughter that's fallen into the grip of opioids. Do I see my daughter as a bad person, a criminal, a drug addict? No, I still see her as my daughter, with a tough behavioral problem that can be treated. That's why I wanted you to know about Frontier Behavioral Health. They see your family the same way. They treat the behavior and send the person you always knew back to you. Call them at 606-297-1501. Real recovery, real change. Frontier Behavioral Health.
Real recovery, real change continues with Ashley Carroll.
Now, with a child and facing jail time, Angela has reached a point where enough is enough.
I would do well after that. That was between, you know, the ages of 20 and 37. But I would always end up going back. It was back and forth, tug of war. I had convinced myself that I'd already done so much in my life that there was no future. You know, my future was exactly what I had been doing. When I got back out of prison and I went home and I started using again, I ended up moving a few more times after that, and I got really bad on using IV drugs, and I had a son who was 5 or 6 at the time, and I realized that I couldn't do it on my own. I had separated from my mom, so like I didn't have that to help me as a parent. And once I started using IV, I reached out to my son's father, and he stepped in. So he took care of him for a little while, and that made me feel even worse. That made me feel like I was not a good parent, and I had just already burned my life to the ground. So I ended up back in jail over that. And while I was in jail, I was in there for 3 years, and I didn't hear anything from my son at all. I talked to my mom, but she never talked to my son either. So we didn't know where my kid was and what was happening. And then when I got out of jail that time, I found out that my son had been living in a car with his father. And his father was doctor shopping and on the needle too and things like that. So like he had, he had no one. I was a mess up and his dad was a mess up. And so, well, after that, I got custody of my kid back. And, you know, I was just roughing it, struggling, single mother, and trying to get him raised. And I still did dabble with drugs and selling drugs and stuff like that, because like I had to keep a roof over his head and stuff, and I would justify that, you know, for just doing the best that I could. And then I ended up with some, you know, minor charges, and they put me on drug court. So I started drug court and still couldn't stop on my own. So I ended up in a treatment center. So after that, I graduated drug court, and it was the very first thing that I'd ever completed in my entire life. And I was proud of myself. I would end up going back out again. So I kind of raised my son in the pattern of the disease. And I ended up back on drug court again. And when I went on drug court for the last time, like at that point, I had become suicidal. I just wanted to die in my disease, and that was it. I feel like I had failed everyone, including myself. So I took the drug court again, couldn't stop on my own, and washed back up into treatment. In between all that time, I had been introduced to a program, and I'd worked the 12 steps. So I knew a little bit more about recovery. So I had to investigate a lot of things within myself. At that point, I realized that drugs was not the problem. I was the problem, and I needed to do something about it. I started to live the steps instead of just writing them down on paper. You know, like step one is surrender. And there was things in my life that I had to surrender. You know, I wasn't in control of anything. The only thing that I control is my actions and my reactions to things. And if I can control somewhat of what my actions and reactions could be, then I can kind of determine the outcome, you know, good or bad. Today, I have not only completed drug court twice, but I have a bachelor's degree and moving on, hopefully, into my master's, into becoming a counselor. And I work in treatment. So I get to give back and help other struggling addicts to find real hope. And so I'm full of hope today. My relationship with my son is, I always like to tell people that, you know how they say rebuilding relationships? It's not rebuilding, it's building it, because we never had one. I was always in survival mode and trying to raise him, and wasn't like emotionally and communicating and all of those things with him. And like today we're working on that. It's a work in progress. Reach out for help. Look for others for guidance. Don't believe the patterns of behavior in your head that tells you that you're not good enough and that you'll never make it and you'll never amount to anything.
The opioid epidemic has hit Kentucky particularly hard, with a high number of overdose deaths involving opioids. In 2020, Kentucky had the third highest age-adjusted drug overdose fatality rate in the United States, at 49.3 deaths per 100,000 people. Real Recovery, Real Change continues with Ashley Carroll.
Angela is now building her relationship with her son and giving back by counseling others, and she is happily married. More on that a little later. Now let's meet George Carter.
always getting in trouble. You know, I had meningitis when I was little, when I was about 3, and you know, they'd give me up to die. And they told my mom that if I did live, I'd never walk or talk or none of that. You know, so like it's a miracle that I'm here. And I think where my parents had almost lost me growing up, they babied me. You know, I didn't have really no rules, not a whole lot of structure. They were just like, you know, we almost lost George, so we're gonna let him do what he wants. Try to ride a bike with no handlebars on it, down a hill, jumping off of buildings, climbing on top of buildings, playing football. You know, we played, had a group of friends that we would all get together and we'd have these huge football games. You know, it's pretty rough. You know, we were rough kids. I was just always seeking attention, you know. A lot of times, you know, when my dad worked so much, and you know, my mom had 3 kids, like, we got attention, but like, I would seek more attention, you know. I think I've always been like real self-centered from a young age, you know, and good attention or bad attention, you know. I just like the spotlight. My dad, he worked hard, and you know, my mom, she would watch after us kids, but you know, like when my dad had time off, a lot of times we would go to my uncle's house, and you know, they'd be playing cards and drinking and having a good time, and they'd always have me fetching beers and stuff for them, and I'd bring, you know, everybody at the table a beer or whatever, and then I would sneak some of them outside. And I watched a lot of wrestling growing up, and I liked Stone Cold Steve Austin. So I'd go outside and act like Stone Cold, and I'd crack some beers together and drink them, and I liked the way it made me feel. You know, a lot of the people I looked up to drank and things like that, and I just thought it was normal. You know, I thought it was a normal thing. You know, in middle school, I started to smoke pot. You know, I'd experiment with it and skipping school. You know, and you know, I didn't consider drinking and smoking weed drugs. You know, like I've seen, like, you know, a lot of pills and things like that. My dad broke his neck in the mines in 2004, and they started sending him, you know, to the doctor, and you know, their addictions kind of started spiraling after that. And like I always told myself I'd never be like that. So like, you know, I thought drinking and smoking was all right compared to that. You know, I always thought I was in control of this stuff. I thought that, you know, I'm having a good time. Like I'm able to pay bills. I wanted to go to the Marines, and that was my dream ever since I was little. I had a lot of family that served in the military. My papa was a prisoner of war in Korea. He come home. One of my grandpas fought in the Vietnam War. My uncle fought in the Vietnam War. You know, I had a lot of family that was in the military, and that's something I wanted to do. Another uncle in the Navy, another cousin in Iraq, you know, like, I think it was just in my blood. But when I had that meningitis when I was little, it made me deaf in one ear, and the military wouldn't take me. So I'm like 4 months from graduation, and then, you know, I'm having to choose another career path with not much preparation.
Alcohol use and related issues are significant concerns in Kentucky, with increased rates of alcohol use disorder and alcohol-induced deaths. The rate of alcohol-induced deaths increased from 6.6% to 14.6% per 100,000 people between 2013 and 2020. Real Recovery, Real Change continues with Ashley Carroll.
George is playing football with dreams of serving in the military, but his dreams are about to change.
So in Eastern Kentucky, you know, it seems like you either mine coal, or you go to school, or you sell drugs. You know, it's like the only 3 outs. Where I goofed off a lot, you know, my early years in school, my grades wasn't near what they should have been, and you know, I felt defeated not being able to go to the military. So, you know, I got in a car wreck when I was 17 years old, and they were giving me like 120 pain pills a month, you know, and I hadn't even graduated high school yet. And you know, at first I sold them, and then I started just getting curious, like why would somebody give everything that they've got for this little pill, you know? I underestimated it. I basically have felt like this was the hand that's been dealt to me, was that of an addict and that of a dealer, and that's the way I lived. I felt in control at first. I kind of eased my way into them, and then once so like the nerve pills, Xanax, once I started taking those, I fell in love. You know, that was my first true love. Like, you know, and if you'd asked me that question, I'd say, you know, like my parents, and then, you know, girlfriends I've had, or, you know, falling in love with football and things like that. But like, if I really look back at it, my first true love was nerve pills. It progressed for me just about like anyone else. You know, I would, the weekends would turn into 3 days, would turn into 4 days, and then before you know it, I'm using every day, and all the time I'm justifying what I'm doing. You know, I'm comparing myself to other addicts that are worse off than me in my book. You know, like when I was doing pills, I'm like, well, you know, as long as I'm not like using the needle. I always thought that was the most disgusting thing on the planet, but that day, my addiction, you know, it won out. You know, and that little voice, you know, devil sitting on your shoulder told me, it won't hurt you. You know, you're having fun, you're in control, you can stop when you want to. And I always thought it was a willpower thing. You know, so I was like, I'll try it once, and then, you know, I'll show everybody that you can quit. So like mine come from a place of ego. You know, I thought I could do it and just set it down, and have more willpower than that. But the disease of addiction don't play that way. Definitely, once I started doing it, I was like, I will never use a needle after somebody. And then basically it spiraled all the way out to where like there's no one else I can compare myself to now. You know, I'm out here, I'm homeless. You know, I'm staying around from place to place. The vehicles are gone. The women, you know, like I had relationships with are gone. I lost my dad to this disease, you know, and I feel like I played a major role in contributing to his death, you know, and that was, I just had no hope, you know. I didn't see no way out.
I'm a mom just like you, and I have a son that's fallen into the grip of opioids. Do I see my son as a bad person, a criminal, a drug addict? No, I still see him as my son with a tough behavioral problem that can be treated. That's why I wanted you to know about Frontier Behavioral Health. They see your family the same way. They treat the behavior and send the person you always knew back to you. Call them at 606-297-1501. Real recovery, real change. Frontier Behavioral Health.
Real Recovery, Real Change continues with Ashley Carroll.
George is selling and he is addicted, but the things he swore he would never do are coming his way.
I started using more to support my habit, and then whenever, you know, those things went there, I started breaking the law, stealing cars, stealing guns off people. You know, anything to support my habit. Even selling myself to like older women for money or drugs. I've been in now treatment, 90, you know, I get 90 days clean, I'd relapse. I get 90 days clean, I'd relapse. I get 6 months clean, I'd go back out. And I kept wondering, like, why does this keep happening? I remember riding down the road and I got 2 grams of fentanyl, and a song come on the radio, and I swear I think God put it on there. And just out of nowhere, man, tears started coming out of my eyes. I started crying, and you know, I felt dead on the inside. You know, I didn't have no desire. All my hopes, dreams, and ambitions were gone. You know, I didn't have no desire to live. You know, I was one of them people, I would wake up, and when I would wake up, from doing a lot of heroin or fentanyl, I'd be mad at the world. Like, why couldn't I have just died, you know? Why do I gotta get up and do this again today? Why do I gotta get up and try to find another fix? I don't wanna do this. I don't wanna keep living like this. And I believe God put that song on the radio because I'm riding down through there and I prayed. And I remember praying. And that's where my relapses always started at, you know? It's like every time I quit praying, I'd relapse. I prayed that day, I said, God, please, if you're there, you know, heal me or kill me. I was like, I can't keep doing this. I can't keep living like this. You've got to intervene somehow. Within 5 minutes of praying, something happened. And then, you know, me having a big ego, I was like, well, God, you're gonna have to prove it to me again because I'm doing the rest of this, you know, I'm doing the rest of these drugs. So I go in there and I made a decision. I said, I'm gonna put all this dope on this can, I'm gonna do it. And if I wake up in the morning, if I live, I'll go get help. I tested God that day. And I know a man, you know, shouldn't do that, but that was my breaking point. When I woke up that next morning, my phone had like 50 missed calls. And as soon as my eyes opened, it was ringing. And I said, I'm ready right now. If you guys come right now, I'm ready. I said, if it takes you an hour or two to get here, I might not be here. I was like, but I'm ready, I'm willing right now to come. And I went and I experienced the worst detox of my life. And I'm like, man, I'm gonna die. You know, I thought I was really gonna die from detoxing that day. And I think it's a big reason why I'm clean today. I never wanna feel like that again. All that time I was trying to fill a void inside of me. And that's a God-sized hole. And it can't be filled with nothing material. You know, it's a God-sized hole, so it belongs to Him. Today, I devote my life to helping people. I remember hitting my knees and praying whenever I was in treatment. I was like, I think I know what my purpose is. So like, all this pain, all this heartache, my whole experience of life has never been about me, so that I can help somebody else. I know that this is a spiritual sickness, and it requires a spiritual solution. You know, we got to go from self-centered to God-centered. And that first step's the hardest, you know. I don't have to sit here and think about, hey, I've got to stay clean for the rest of my life. You know, it don't work that way. I stay clean for today. No matter what happens today, if my head hits that pillow clean tonight, then I've had a successful day. You know, and that there is hope out there. And, you know, families can be restored. You can become employable again. You know, you can get off the streets. You can beat the odds. You can beat the statistics. You know, don't tell the world how big your problems are. Tell your problems how big your God is.
George has been clean for 3 years and is living a life of service, and he has found happiness with his wife, Angela. That's right, George and Angela have overcome addiction and are now helping others. It's proof there can be real recovery, real change. I'm Ashley Carroll. Thank you for watching.
This program has been a production of Frontier Behavioral Health. For immediate help, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, dial 606-297-1501. Special thanks to the Redemption Chapel Church in Paintsville, Kentucky, for providing production assistance as a backdrop location for today's program, and welcomes all who come expecting to our morning service each Sunday at 11 a.m.